Well, I think that, I go way back and think that you had various proprietors of the restaurant, which was in, which was on city property. The city owned Charles Washington Hall, as they still do today, and blacks couldn't go there and be served in that restaurant, uh, owned by the city. Well, the city owned the building, but they didn't run the restaurant. So back during these early days, uh, Civic League and ACP got together and said, well, let's just go around to some of these places. We had, I think, in teams of two, people that would go to different places, and one of those places was Charles Washington Theater, when it was right up here in Ranson. And because you remember Charles Washington Theater, whites sat in the middle, and I think on the right side, and blacks, even though it's all one level, blacks had to sit on the left side.
Right.
So they had a crew that went to that theater, and then had a crew to go to the New Central Restaurant downtown. And I'll never forget myself and Sylvia Stanton went down to New Central Restaurant, and walked in, sat at the counter, and ordered Cokes. And there was nothing anybody could do. He said nobody threatened us or anything else. But it had been a long, long standing tradition that blacks always went, if you wanted something from the restaurant, you went to the back door.
Right.
You went to the back door and waited back there in the kitchen until the cooks could fix it up. But we
But that restaurant is still suffering because black people still won't go down there.
yes, right. They still remember that.
Very strange feeling when you
Yeah.
go in that place. It's just like, well, I don't
Yeah.
know what, like, I don't know.
It's just something that's
Yep.
inbred into
Yep.
you.
Yep. A lot of times, you can go to some of these, try to go in some of these restaurants. They would tell you like, you can't, I can wait, you wait and I can serve it and all that. But in that restaurant, they would say, you can't come in here to holler and hoop. It really made you feel bad. They weren't nice telling you,
Right.
if there is such thing as being nice telling you.
Right.
But some of them, would tell you in a more subtle way than to be hollering and screaming at you.
Right, right.
Well, I guess something always got me with that restaurant down there. Actually, got to do with your brother, Jim. I understand. He played basketball or football, something like that, and they had some kind of special program down there for all of the students,
Basketball.
and he wasn't invited. Wouldn't let him come in.
Yeah.
And here this fell about the mayor of town too, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The mayor, and here they have a celebration for the old team. Here he's the only black
Right.
player, and he's not allowed in there.
Right.
That had to be hurting. That's one of the reasons why I guess I have a hard time going in there.
And then someone at the restaurant made a statement they had steak dinners, I think it was,
Yeah.
and to send a steak at the dog town. My father had a freezer full. We butchered
Yeah.
cows, everything. And my father, when the guy came and said that they were gonna send a steak,
Right.
my father said, no, he doesn't need steaks. We got a freezer full of them.
Yeah.
But they thought that was the way to.
Right.
Pacify, yeah.
And that was the days of desegregation
Yeah.
of the public schools, and that's how they would
But you
treat
said
the
public
black
schools
players.
desegregated in '65.
Yeah.
The last black school closed in '66.
66, right.
'66 was the last.
Yeah, yeah.
Right then.
Yeah,
Right.
but okay, but the bus, they still ran segregated bus a year after that though, right?
Yeah.
They ran a segregated
Yeah.
bus a
Oh,
year
is that
after the schools ended. Really, they still ran a segregated
Oh,
bus
yeah.
in Jefferson. I couldn't believe it. Yeah.
From Shepherdstown and from Humpersford too. They were picking up people. But you talk about the mood of a particular place. You talk about, not feeling comfortable going into that restaurant, even today, knowing what happened during your childhood and everything, young adulthood. Whenever I go to Winchester and I get close to that Greyhound bus station up there, I get that same feeling. Because, of course, there was a whole bunch of Greyhound bus traffic, early on. and you'd have to go up there to get a bus to Charleston. Going back to school. And I remember one time, probably the only time I got a bus from up there, because later on I got a car. I could travel back and forth. But I remember going to Winchester bus station, and there was a great big area for white passengers. Great big area. But it clearly stated you had, if colored went to this little room in the back. You got your ticket back there, and that's where you got your food back there. And there'd be a small hole in the wall that you could see the waitress. And of course, you were always last. When the waitress didn't have nothing else to do, then they'd wait on you. But I remember that hole in the wall that they would serve blacks through, charging the same amount for ham sandwich, hot dog, or whatever.
Right.
But I always remember that. And whenever I go past that place today in Winchester, it takes me back to those days. I remember that.
You know what? A lot of the restaurants, all the restaurants, you couldn't go in.
Right.
You could go into the back. Sometimes you could go to the front, just stand up there and wait.
Mm-hmm.
But just about every African American citizen of Charlestown or Jefferson County will tell you about the New Central restaurant.
Right.
They would some of them say they've never been in, they would never ever go in.
Right.
And those that went in got that funny feeling about
Yeah.
So
But you know one thing, Jim, is just stop and think. When we used to go to movies down there and leave the movies at night to go home, we stop in the restaurant, just always go in the back to get a hamburger or something like that.
Right.
We always had black cooks there. And you realize those black cooks always made us real big sandwiches, much, much bigger. We got more than our money worth, you know that?
Right.
I never forget that. We got better food than what they got out front.
But the other irony about this whole thing is that New Central restaurant, building owned by the city,
Right.
but the mayor
Right.
of the town at that time was an Italian immigrant,
He was
Greek.
Greek. Right.
immigrant.
Because he spoke with a sort of broken accent.
Yeah,
Also,
yeah. But he was a Greek immigrant,
Right.
and evidently he was following state and national law that you couldn't go into that particular restaurant. But here he was an immigrant
Right.
from another foreign country,
Right.
and it was okay for him to do it. And you don't know how many
Right.
ex-military people or current military people
Right.
who may have gone, wanting,
Right.
some kind of service.
Yeah.
And
Especially after World War II, then, those veterans, you kind of felt sorry for them because
Right.
they had been over there fighting on both the Atlantic and the Pacific,
right,
And some
Right.
of them were on crutches and canes,
yeah,
and had to walk past it. I felt sort of, we were in Boy Scouts then.
Yeah, right.
That really
Uh-huh.
got to me a little bit.